environment, and others. But what the Stoics tell us is that our mind is the only thing really ours, hence genuine power lies in our ability to control that exclusively. Epictetus claimed that our perspective on what occurs to us determines whether or not the world bothers us. Hence, it is not the world that troubles us, but rather our interpretation of it when we allow anger or annoyance to consume us. If you're giving control of your mental state to someone else and that's the last thing you want to do, true freedom is being able to decide how you react no matter what's going on outside. In this video, I'll share 15 powerful lessons based on Stoicism so you can reach that unwavering calm. We're going to go one by one explaining them in depth so you really understand how to apply them in your life and transform but this will not be a simple list of empty advice. Each lesson will be accompanied by a deep reflection, a phrase from a Stoic philosopher, and a clear guide on how to implement it in your day-to-day. By the end of this video, you will have learned how to shield your inner peace and become an unaffected person, a person who does not let himself be carried away by negative emotions, a person who has absolute control over himself. So get ready, because we are going to immerse ourselves in the wisdom of the Stoics and learn together to live with an unwavering serenity. Lesson 1: accept that others do not think like you. If someone offends you, realize that they are only following their own vision of the world. They are not attacking you, but acting according to their own principles. Marcus Aurelius. Think about this. How many times have you felt upset or angry because someone acted in a way you considered incorrect? Maybe your partner forgot an important date, a friend didn't support you in a difficult moment, or a stranger on the street treated you with indifference. And here comes the anger. They shouldn't have done that. But stop for a moment. Ask yourself, who says that others should act according to my expectations? Here lies the first Stoic lesson. Each person in this has their own way of thinking. They're their own beliefs, their own emotions, and their own set of values. The main reason we get angry at others is because we mistakenly believe that everyone should see the world as we see it. But the reality is that everyone is trapped in their own perspective, in their own universe of thoughts and experiences. Let's say you're working on a team project and you've tried your best to make it all work out well. However, there is a colleague who doesn't seem to do his part. He's irresponsible. He doesn't respond to emails on time and always has an excuse for everything. Your first reaction may be anger. It's not fair that I do all the work and he doesn't do anything. I should be more professional. But here's something that the Stoics understood centuries ago. What you consider right is not a universal law. Maybe that partner, he simply has another mentality. Perhaps he has personal problems or simply does not give the same importance to the project as you, and although it is difficult to accept, the reality is that you have no control over his behavior. You only have control over your reaction. Instead of being filled with anger, apply the Stoic mentality. Observe the situation objectively instead of thinking it should be more. Talk about him. He has his own way of acting and my anger will not change that. Focus on what you can control. You can talk to him, look for solutions, or simply do your part without allowing his attitude to affect you. Accept that not everyone has the same work ethic, not everyone has the same sense of responsibility as you, and that is part of life. By understanding this, you free yourself from suffering and unnecessary. Imagine that one day you need emotional support. You feel you're going through a hard time and you decide to call a close friend, but they don't answer. The days go by and they don't show interest in knowing how you are. This can hurt and generate frustration. If he were my true friend, he would have supported me. But this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. How to know what was going on in his life at that moment. Maybe he was dealing with his own problems. Maybe he just doesn't have the emotional capacity to be there for you, or maybe their idea of friendship is different from yours. The important thing here is not to cling to the idea that others should act as we expect instead of feeling resentment. Each person has their own way of seeing friendship. Not everyone expresses it in the same way. If this friend could not be for me at this moment, maybe not it means that you don't care, but you have your own limitations. It's not up to me to change others. I can only change my perspective. This simple change of mindset helps you let go of anger and accept others' differences without resentment. How can one use this knowledge in daily life? Ask yourself, when someone behaves in ways you find objectionable, is it really a personal assault, or are they just behaving from their own viewpoint? I'm furious as I think everyone ought to behave and think like me. How can I let reality be accepted instead of responding with rage and stop obsessing on what I have no control over? Practice Stoic indifference. When someone is rude to you, instead of thinking about what disrespect they think, they are acting according to their level of consciousness, and that doesn't have to affect me. If someone doesn't meet your expectations, instead of thinking should have done this, say, he is free to act as he wants, and I am free to decide how I react. Do the exercise of changing the perspective. Every time you feel anger or annoyance about someone's attitude, make an effort to understand his point of view. Ask why this person could be acting like this, what life experience has led him to behave in this way, what would happen if it were in place. This does not mean justifying bad behaviors, but recognizing that the way we react depends entirely on us. You stop taking things personally when you accept that others are not acting to hurt you, but because they are going their own way. Anger loses its strength. You develop a more flexible mind instead of clinging to the fact that things should be a certain way. You learn to accept diversity of thoughts and attitudes. You become a calmer and more focused person by ceasing to demand that others act as you want you to do. You free yourself from many unnecessary frustrations. You strengthen your self-control. You learn not to react impulsively to the behavior of others, but to choose a response based on wisdom and serenity. Anger is the result of an unfulfilled expectation. We believe that others should act in a specific way, and when they do not, we get frustrated. But the reality is that each person has their own belief system and their own way of looking at life. Accepting this is the key to inner peace. When someone acts in a way that upsets you, instead of reacting with anger, remind yourself, that person is not acting to annoy me, they are simply being themselves according to their own worldview. There is no point in getting angry for something I can't control, and if you manage to apply this mindset, you will realize that many of the things that used to bother you will no longer affect you, because at the end of the day, the only person who can really disturb your peace is yourself. Lesson 2: not reactions. Immediately learn to pause between stimulus and response. There is a space. In that space lies our ability to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. How many times have you said something angry and then regretted it? How many times has an impulsive response made a situation worse instead of solving it? Surely more than once. The problem with anger is that it makes us react without thinking. We act instinctively without giving ourselves time to evaluate if our response is the best, and that is where the error lies. When we react without pause, we become slaves to our emotions. The Stoics understood this perfectly. Epictetus told us that it is not what happens to us that affects us, but how we react to it. If we allow any comment, situation, or problem to provoke an automatic reaction, we are giving up our power. That's why the second lesson is simple but powerful. Before reacting, pause. Don't respond immediately when you feel anger, frustration, or annoyance. Give yourself a few seconds, a few minutes, or even a few hours to process it. That pause will allow you to act intelligently instead of impulse. Imagine that you are having a conversation with your partner and suddenly they say something that bothers you deeply. It can be a criticism, a sarcastic comment, or a phrase that you feel unfair. Your first instinct is to respond with the same intensity or even attack back. But if you do, what will happen? Surely the conversation will turn into a fight. The words will rise in tone, and both will end up saying things, of course, the ones who would come to regret it later. Imagine now another variation of this situation. Feel the wrath within you. Inhale deeply, then stop momentarily before responding. What then is the best approach to manage this? Perhaps you understand that the ideal answer is to say, I'm going to consider this and discuss it later. Before you speak, instead of responding angrily, you say something like, I understand your point, I would like to talk about it further later, to clarify it. By doing this, you demonstrate maturity, self-control, and wisdom. It does not mean that you accept injustices, but that you choose the best time and the best way. How to apply this lesson in daily life. When someone provokes you, instead of reacting immediately, pause for a count of 5 or even 10 in your mind. Take a deep breath and slowly let Ask yourself, how would you respond if I were in my best state of mind? If the anger is very intense, walk away before answering. If you are in an argument, say, I need a moment to think, let's talk later. If you receive a message that makes you angry, don't answer immediately. Wait a few minutes or hours before answering. Make the pause a habit before sending an angry message. I relate ELO, and ask yourself if it is really the best way to express yourself. Before reacting with annoyance, ask yourself, it's really important, deserves my energy? In what this lesson helps you avoid making impulsive mistakes. Many times what we say angrily gets us into unnecessary trouble. You become a more respected person. People will admire your ability to stay calm in difficult situations. You have more control over your emotions. You are no longer a puppet of your anger, but the owner of your reaction. You reduce conflicts in your life. Most problems get worse when we react badly. Learning to pause helps you avoid fights and misunderstandings. Anger is not the problem. The problem is what we do with that anger. If we react without thinking, we let our emotions control us. But if we learn to pause, we take control of the situation and choose the best response. Remember, there is always a moment between the stimulus and the response, and at that moment you decide who you want to be. Lesson 3, do not take anything as a personal attack. What others say and do is a reflection of them, not of you. Epictetus, I'm going to ask you a question. How many times have you been offended by what someone said or did? Maybe a friend made a sarcastic comment, a family member criticized you for no apparent reason, or someone on the street looked at you in a way that you interpreted as an insult, and the first thing you thought was, why does he treat me like this? What did I do to him? But here's the secret. Almost nothing that others do has. This is a common misconception. We believe that the world revolves around us, that people act thinking about how it will affect us, but the truth is that most of the time others are trapped in their own world, in their own problems, insecurities and worries. It's unusual for someone treating you poorly to have anything personal for you. Rather, it's because they are mirroring what the Stoics have within. They understood this better than anyone. Epictetus said that if we get upset by what others say or do, we are giving them more power than they deserve. It is not the words or actions of others that affect us, but our interpretation of them. Look, if someone insults you in a language you don't understand, it won't affect you. You won't feel anger or frustration simply because you don't know what they're saying to you. But if someone says something to you in your language and you interpret it as an offense, then it does hurt you. You see, the difference is not the word itself, but the meaning you give it. Now, how this applies in real life. Imagine that you arrive at work and greet your boss. He looks at you out of the corner of your eye, but he doesn't respond. You automatically think, he's angry with me, he says something wrong, he wants to fire me, and everything. You spend the day worrying about every interaction you've had with him in the last week. But what you don't know is that your boss is actually worried about something personal. Maybe he had an argument with his partner, he received bad news, or he's just having a hard day. His attitude has nothing to do with you. Now imagine that instead of taking it personally, you just think, maybe he's distracted with his own problems, I'm not going to give it importance. How much emotional energy would you save? You've all been through this. You've written to someone. You see that they read your message and they don't respond. Your mind immediately starts creating stories. I'm sure he's upset with me. Maybe he doesn't like me anymore. Maybe I said something that offended him. But here's something you need to understand. People aren't looking out for you as much as you think. Maybe you were busy. Maybe you got distracted or just forgot to answer. If every time someone doesn't act as you expect, you assume it's something against you, you'll be filling yourself with unnecessary stress and worry. You will release a lot of emotional baggage when you recognize that the behavior of others is seldom a personal assault. When you change your mindset, you become impervious to what people say. Let their poison poison you. Alternatively, quit ruling over you. And it is really genuine freedom, buddy. Lesson 4. Individuals will act according to their preferences rather than what you would like. Accept events as they occur. Do not anticipate things to go the way you wish. Instead, achieve calm by means of this acceptance. Epictetus, let me say straightforwardly, most of your rage and disappointments in life are derived from your own actions rather than from what others do. that you expected them to do. Let me repeat it, because this is important. You don't get angry because someone was late, but because you expected them to be punctual. You don't get upset because someone didn't thank you, but because you expected them to do it. It doesn't frustrate you that someone ignores you, but because you expected them to pay attention to you. You notice the pattern here. Your anger doesn't come from the actions of others, but from your own expectations. Look at everyone. It happens. We expect others to be considered attentive, responsible, but the reality is that each person acts according to their own criteria, not yours, and if you base your peace on others behaving as you want, you will live in a constant state of frustration. The Stoics understood this perfectly. Epictetus told us that we do not suffer for what happens, but for how we interpret what happens, and one of the most harmful interpretations, that what if we accept once and for all that people will do what they want to do no matter what you think is right. The answer is simple. You would live in peace, surely. You have someone in your life with whom you are always the one who starts the conversation. If you don't write, that person can happen weeks without sending you a message, and that for many is frustrating. They think if he cared he would write me. I always make the effort, why doesn't he? But here is the thing, that person is not in this world to meet your expectations of friendship. Maybe his way of being is different. Maybe he doesn't like to write messages. Maybe he just doesn't realize that you expect something from he, and what do you want to bother you about that? Nothing. Just make your existence bitter. Now imagine that you accept reality. Instead of thinking, if he were my true friend he would write to me, you think, my friend is how it is. If I want to talk to him I write to him, and if I don't continue with my life. Instead of filling you with resentment, you simply accept that each person has their own way of acting. And here's something curious happens when you stop expecting people to act as you want. Disappointments disappear. Let's say you are in a work team and there is someone who never puts the same effort as you, do not do things well, deliver late reports, and always seems disinterested. Your natural reaction is to annoy you. He is irresponsible, he should try harder. But if he does, you think, well, what changes? Your anger will make him more responsible, will make him do his job better. Number will only make you stressed and frustrated more. Now try to change your perspective. Instead of thinking he should be more committed, think he is like this. It is not up to me to change him. I can do my part as best as possible. And instead of feeling anger every time you see him, remember that you have no control over what he does, only about how you decide to act. When you let go of that need for others to be the way you want you to be free. How to apply this lesson in daily life? Every time someone does something that bothers you, ask yourself, I'm getting angry about what they did or what I expected them to do. I have the right to demand that this person act the way I want them to. What would happen if I accept that everyone is as it is, instead of fighting against reality? And every time you notice that your expectations are affecting you, try to do this. Let go of the idea that others owe you something. No one is obliged to be as you want. Each person to have their own way of seeing life. Don't try to change others. People change when they want to know. When you demand it, adjust your expectations to reality. No, expect everyone to think like you. Don't expect everyone to react as you would. Stop taking things personally. If someone doesn't meet your expectations, it's simply their way of being. How does this lesson help you? You get many things except disappointments when you learn to understand that people will behave according to their standards and not yours. You also avoid expecting anything from anybody as you don't anticipate anything from anyone. That nothing surprises or frustrates you more. You stop carrying the weight of trying to change others. More time and energy for yourself. Instead of spending energy on getting upset about how others are, you use it to improve your own life. The world is not going to change to suit your expectations, or you will constantly adapt yourself, or you will live constantly angry. Lesson 5. Distinguish between what you can control and what there are not. Things that are in our power and things that are not. Wisdom consists in knowing how to differentiate between the two. Epictetus. Imagine you get up in the morning, check the weather forecast, and suddenly you realize that it is raining. At that moment you have two options. You can get angry, lament about the rain, and regret that your plans have changed, or you can accept that the weather is something that you cannot control and adapt to the situation. True freedom lies in recognizing that while you can decide how to react to the rain, you have no power over it falling or not. Many times we find ourselves trapped in the struggle to change what is not in our hands. Think of a discussion in which you try to convince someone of your point of view, or in a project in which, despite of all your effort, the opinion of others remains unchanged. Anger, Frustration and helplessness arise precisely when we try to control what we simply cannot change. The key is to focus on what you can influence, your thoughts, your actions, and above all your attitude. When you clearly distinguish between what you can control and what you do not, stop wasting energy in trying to change reality. Instead of that's why you invest that resource in improving your own life in your mind and in acting in a way that is consistent with your values. Remember that the universe operates in ways that are often beyond our understanding and control. It is not about resigning or surrendering in the face of adversity, but about understanding that there are circumstances such as the opinion of others, the climate, the economy, or even the behavior of people who do not share your ideas that do not depend on you. This understanding gives you the possibility to act in a more serene and conscious way. Imagine a situation in which you plan a special outing with friends, but when you arrive at the place you realize that the atmosphere is not what you expected. Maybe the music is too loud or the atmosphere is too chaotic. If you try to force the situation to become perfect, you will end up stressed and frustrated. On the other hand, if you accept that you can't control every detail of what happens around you, you can find a way to enjoy the company of your friends and take advantage of the good of the moment by adapting to reality. As it is, another way to see this lesson is by thinking about how you react to criticism. We often worry too much about what others think of us, trying to change to meet their expectations. But if you stop to reflect, you will realize that the only opinion that really matters is your own. You can listen and learn from constructive criticism, but if it is destructive or malicious comments, it is best to recognize that you have no control over the way others express their ideas. Only you have control over how you feel and how you decide to respond to those criticisms. Another common experience is to face setbacks at work. Imagine that you have prepared an important presentation and AR of your efforts, technical or communication circumstances play tricks on you. At that moment, it is natural to feel frustration or even guilt, but if you focus on what you can control, you realize that the only thing that was in your hands was your preparation and attitude. Technology or external circumstances are variables that do not depend on you, and worrying about them only robs you of energy. With a calm mind, you can look for solutions, improvise, and learn from the situation instead of regretting what you could not change. Recognizing this difference also helps you cultivate patience. When you understand that you cannot influence everything that happens, you learn to accept the ups and downs of life with a smile. That smile is not one of resignation, but of conscious acceptance, knowing that every experience, whether good or bad, offers you the opportunity to grow. By ceasing to fight against the current of the uncontrollable, you become more resilient and able to navigate life with a serenity that many would envy. One of the main lessons of Stoicism is exactly this: to let go of what is not and concentrate on what relies on you, therefore offering an invitation to conscious action, to responsibility. It is about realizing your limitations and behaving in a manner that your inner calm is not disturbed by outer events, not about discounting the outside world or being apathetic to what is occurring. By applying this lesson, you realize that true strength lies not in changing the world, but in transforming your inner self. When you free your mind from the need to control the uncontrollable, you open space for the creativity, for reflection, and for true well-being. Music day. When faced with unexpected situations, you have the opportunity to choose how to react, to decide if you allow circumstances to dominate you or if you take control of your response. That small decision in appearance is what defines and strengthens you in essence. Distinguish between what you can control and what you cannot is a constant practice. A daily invitation to self-awareness, a powerful tool that helps you navigate life with a clarity that few achieve. It is not about ignoring problems, but about facing them with the certainty that although you cannot change everything, you can decide how to respond to them. At the end of the day, what really matters is how you live and how you transform each experience into an opportunity to grow. Lesson: if you do not expect justice from the world, accept it as it is. The world is neither fair nor unfair. It is simply our interpretation that makes it seem in one way or another. Marcus Aurelius. To see how many times you have felt that something that happened to you was unjust. How many times have you thought that you did everything right and still things went wrong? How many times have you seen that someone who does not deserve it gets recognition, success, or Rewards while you who make an effort seem to be that you don't receive what you deserve. How many times have you felt anger because someone who has done evil continues as if nothing happened? While others who act well have surely many difficulties, and it is normal because from a young age they teach us that life should be fair, that if we do good the good will return to us, that if we make an effort we will achieve what we want, that if we are honest things will turn out well for us. But the reality is, it's that life doesn't follow our rules. The problem with thinking that the world is fair or unjust is that it leads us to frustration. It makes us feel that there is something wrong, when in reality the world is simply as it is. It doesn't respond to our expectations. It doesn't follow a script where the good guys always win and the bad guys always lose. Life is chaotic, unpredictable, and many times it will seem that efforts have no immediate reward. But this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. The key is not to expect justice, but to act correctly regardless of the result. Look, imagine that you are at work and you try harder than anyone else. You arrive early, you do everything, you give more than what is asked of you, and suddenly you see that someone who barely does the minimum. You feel frustrated. You think, no, it's fair that they should have recognized you. But here's the thing. Is the universe obligated to reward you? Think about this. You don't work hard because you expect a reward. You work hard because it's your nature, because it defines you, because you want to do things right. If the recognition comes, well, if it doesn't come too, because your value doesn't depend on external validation. Aurelius said that we can't expect the world to treat us the way we think it should treat us. The world takes its course if it doesn't care what we expect of it. So instead of suffering for what we think is unfair, the best thing we can do is accept reality as it is and continue to act with virtue no matter the outcome. Now imagine that you help someone from the heart, without expecting anything in return, but that person never thanks you for it. Should that change your nature? You should stop helping just because you did not receive gratitude. If you stop doing good because others do not value it, then your motivation was not really good, but recognition. The Stoics taught that good is done by the good yourself, not for the reward. You don't help because you expect gratitude. You help because you're a person who helps. You're not honest because they'll recognize you. You're honest because it's the right thing to do. You're not disciplined because someone will reward you. You're disciplined because that's your principle. The moment you learn this, you free yourself because you stop depending on a world that isn't designed to meet your expectations. Think about nature. The sun shines every day no matter if someone is grateful or not. The rain falls on the field without wondering if the earth deserves it or not. The trees bear fruit without expecting gratitude. Do the same. Act from your essence without expecting the world to give you something back in return. Look, people will waste time complaining that life is not fair, but you know what the true wise people do? They keep going. Go ahead. Keep doing the right thing, no matter the outcome. Keep being themselves without waiting for the world to reward them. What you can do is change the way you look at life. Instead of saying, this is not fair, say, this is what it is now. What am I going to do about it? Instead of asking yourself why others are luckier, ask yourself, how can you keep moving forward no matter what they do? True peace comes when you let go of the expectation that life should be fair and simply accept reality as it is. When you stop asking life to treat you in a certain way and instead decide to respond with greatness to whatever life puts in your way. Others invest their energy in continuing to grow instead of wasting it on frustration. Where you really rise above anger, above frustration, above complaint, that's where you really find freedom. Lesson 7. Anger is a choice, not a reaction. Inevitable. It's not the person or the event that makes you angry, but your opinion about it. Epictetus. Now, tell me how many times you've heard someone say, it's that they made me angry. Surely many. Because almost everyone thinks that anger is something that happens to us automatically, as if it were an uncontrollable reaction, as if we had no choice but to explode when someone provokes us. But here is the truth that the Stoics understood centuries ago. Anger is not something that happens to you. It is something that you choose. Yes, it sounds difficult to accept because it is easier to say that it is the fault of others, that someone else made us angry, than circumstances caused us, that if the other person had not said or done such a thing we would be at peace. But the truth is that the only person responsible for your anger is you, because it is not what happens that makes you explode, but how you decide to interpret it. Imagine that you are in a traffic jam, you are in a hurry, you need to get somewhere, and suddenly someone gets into your lane without her. What do? If you're like most people, you probably insult, hit the steering wheel, and get full of fury because that person is an idiot, because he doesn't respect, because how can he be so reckless? But now stop for a second and ask yourself, you gain something. With that anger, the traffic is still there. The other person goes on his way without even noticing your frustration, and the only thing you achieve is to increase your level of stress unnecessarily. But now imagine that in that same situation you take a stoic approach. Instead of reacting with anger, you simply think, that person is in a hurry, it doesn't affect me, and you keep driving calmly. In both cases, the traffic remains the same. But the difference is that in the second version you did not allow a stranger to have control over your emotional state, and this applies to everything. Someone made a rude comment to you. You have two: you can let their words control your mood and respond with anger, or you can remember that the words of others only have the power that you choose to give them. Someone didn't treat you with respect, you can choose to get angry, or you can decide that it is not worth carrying the emotional garbage of others. The problem with anger is not only that it makes us feel bad, but it also makes us act in ways that we later regret, because when you are angry you don't think clearly, you become impulsive, you say things that you would like to retract, you make decisions that you later regret, because anger clouds judgment and turns us into puppets of the emotion of the moment. Look, the Stoics didn't say that anger doesn't exist. Of course it exists, it's a natural emotion. But what they taught is that you don't have to recognize that you feel anger without acting on it. You can see it, feel it, and then let it go instead of feeding it. Because here is the key: anger feeds on your thoughts. If someone insults you and you keep repeating in your mind what they told you, you keep wondering why that person is like that, you keep analyzing every word and reliving the moment, what you do is add fuel to the fire. But if in change of you decide not to give it importance and you stop thinking about it, anger fades on its own, because anger cannot survive if you don't feed it. Now you may wonder, but what if someone really treats me badly? It is not fair that I get angry, and here is the Stoic answer. What do you gain from anger? It solves something. It improves the situation most of the time. The answer is no, and if the anger doesn't bring anything positive, so there's no point in giving it space in your mind. Epictetus said that anger is like grabbing a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else, but the only one who burns is you. So if you want to get rid of anger, start seeing it as a choice, not an automatic reaction. The next time you feel anger invade you, ask yourself, I want this person or situation to control my emotional state. I want to waste my energy on this, and if the answer is no, then let go. Breathe and move on. Because at the end of the day, anger doesn't punish others. It punishes you, and if you can learn to see it for what it is, an option that you can refuse, then you will have earned a freedom that few have. The freedom not to be dominated by your own mind. Lesson 8. Revenge. It's a waste of time and energy. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Marcus Aurelius. Now tell me the truth. How many times have you felt that burning desire to strike back at someone who hurt you? How many times have you ever thought, he's going to regret what he did to me? How many times have you wanted to show someone that he made a mistake with you, that he should not have treated you, so he has to pay for what he did? For sure many, because at some point we have felt that need for justice, that impulse to want to balance the scales. But here is the question: it is really worth it? The Stoics were clear. Revenge is not only unnecessary, but also makes you a slave to the past. It ties you to the person who hurt you. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of resentment and pain that doesn't let you move forward, because as long as you keep thinking about how to hit someone back, you keep allowing that person to have power over you. You keep spending your energy on something that deep down won't change anything. Look, imagine that someone betrays you, lies to you, or uses your wound. It's there, it hurts, you feel frustrated, and the first thing you think is, I can't let it get out with yours. But stop for a second and ask yourself, what do you gain from desiring revenge? Will it fix you? Something. It will give you back peace. It will make you a better person. Because here is the truth that few want to accept. Revenge never brings real satisfaction. It only keeps you tied to negativity. Think of someone who hurt you years ago. If you still hold a grudge, that means that person continues to take up space in your mind, continues to be affected. Even if it doesn't, it's not even in your life, but tell me, why give it so much power? Why allow someone who is no longer in your path to continue to have control over you? And it is that many times we confuse revenge with justice. We believe that if the other person suffers or realizes their mistake in some way, that will bring us peace, but in reality justice is not always fulfilled as we want. There are people who never they will realize what they did. There are people who will go on with their lives without regrets, and if your happiness depends on the other suffering, then you will always be a prisoner of something that is out of your control. Now let me tell you something that the Stoics understood well. The best revenge is not to destroy the other person, but to prove that he did not succeed in destroying you, that he did not break you, that he did not make you fulfilled of hatred, that failed to get you out of your way. Because tell me, what's more powerful, to lose your energy looking for how to hurt someone, or just move on and be better than ever? Marcus Aurelius said that when someone hurts you, instead of lowering yourself to their level, you should rise above the situation, not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough not to let resentment control your life. Look, imagine that someone publicly humiliated you. At that moment, the only thing you want is to do the same thing. Show him that he didn't get away with it. But if you fall into that game, you become the same thing you criticize. On the other hand, if instead of focusing on revenge you focus on improving, growing, continuing your life with dignity, that person will be in the past without being able to affect you anymore. Because at the end of the day, the best response to someone who wanted to see you to fall is to show him that you are still standing, that nothing stopped you, that his damage did not leave you marked, that you continue to move forward with your head held high and without the need to get dirty with his own poison. Now, tell me, do you want to be the type of person who carries the weight of resentment, or the type of person who walks lightly because he does not need to prove anything to anyone? The choice will always be yours. Lesson 9. Do not argue with fools. It's not worth it. Never argue with a fool, because he'll drag you to his level and beat you by experience. Let's see. Tell me the truth. How many times you found yourself arguing with someone who simply doesn't listen to reason, who ignores any logic, who is so trapped in his own worldview that no matter what you say, he's always going to believe he's right? For sure, more times than you'd like to admit, and every time it happens you end up with the same feeling: exhaustion, frustration, desire to have saved your energy. Here is the key to this lesson. Not all arguments are worthwhile. Not all people deserve an answer. Not every disagreement should become an eternal debate, because if there is something that the Stoics understood well, it is that trying to reason with someone who does not want to understand is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It just wears you out, and in the end you achieve nothing. Look, imagine that you are in a conversation and someone says something completely absurd, something that doesn't make sense, something based on unfounded assumptions. Your first impulse is to correct them, prove them wrong, give them proof, explain reality. But this is where you have to ask yourself the most important question: is worth it? Because most of the time when a person is completely closed to an idea, is not looking for the truth, it is looking to reaffirm what it already believes. And that is where many fall into the trap, because they think that with enough arguments, enough patience, enough explanations, the other person will change their mind. But the truth is that when someone does not want to learn anything you say, it will work, and in the end, instead of leaving the conversation with a feeling of victory, you leave exhausted, wondering why you wasted your time. Epictetus said that the true sage chooses his battles, that there is no honor in debating with someone who does not seek the truth, but only defend his own ego. Because here is the hardest truth of all: when you argue with someone who does not reason, no matter how logical you are, the only one who loses is you. Now imagine that you are on social networks. You see a comment full of ignorance, one of those that makes you want to respond with a whole paragraph explaining why you're wrong. But before you do that, stop for a second and ask yourself, what I'm going to gain from this? This person really wants to understand, or is just looking for attention? Because if it's the latter, the best thing you can do is ignore and get on with your life. Look, there's a huge difference between an intelligent debate and a useless discussion. In a debate, both sides are willing to listen, to consider new ideas, to learn something. But in a useless argument, there are only two egos colliding. No one listens, no one changes their mind, no one wins. They just wear themselves out in a fight that leads nowhere. And here comes the most important thing. If you want to preserve your peace of mind, learn to recognize when a conversation is not worth it and walk away before you fall into the trap. Because the problem is not only that you waste time, the problem is that when you argue with fools, Many times you end up dropping to their level. You end up so frustrated that you start talking like them, acting like them, and when that happens, you already lost. Marcus Aurelius said it clearly. Don't allow the behavior of others to turn you into what they are, and that includes fools, because if you let yourself be carried away by their game, you end up becoming one more. So the next time someone wants to drag you into an argument, absurd, ask yourself, is this person really worth learning? Either he just wants to fight, I want to spend my energy on this, or I'd rather stay at peace, because true wisdom isn't in winning debates, but in knowing which ones aren't even worth starting. Lesson 10. Don't expect others to act like you would. It is ridiculous to expect others to think or act as you would. Each person follows their own logic, their own education, and their own experiences. Accepting it will make you many disappointments. Marcus Aurelius. Now tell me the truth. How many times have you felt disappointed because someone did not react as you expected? Perhaps you did a favor hoping that they thanked you and did not even say thank you. Perhaps you trusted someone and they did not return the same loyalty. Maybe you're always willing to help, but when you were the one who needed support, no one showed up, and that's where the frustration comes, the resentment, the feeling of injustice. If I were in their place, I would have done things right. But here is the reality that the Stoics understood centuries ago. No one is forced to act as you would, and here is the big mistake that most people make. When people expect others to have the same values, the same reasoning, the same ethics as you, and when they don't, then comes the wrath, the disappointment, the despair. But tell me, does it really make sense to suffer because of that? Each individual perceives the world differently. Hence, what is correct to you may not be what you see. What is evident to you is not evident to someone else. For you, it's loyalty, dedication, and respect. For someone else, it could have a far different meaning. Imagine now that you always speaks the truth as you respect integrity. One day you discover someone lied to you, and your fury boils since you wonder, how could they have done it? If I would never engage in such behavior, you should keep in mind the lesson. Your behavior does not guarantee that others will follow suit. Everybody has their own code of life, perspective, values, and if you spend your life waiting for everyone to act like you will just be left with unneeded frustrations. In an even more basic sense, maybe you are among those who constantly assists others at any moment without being requested to do so. And then there comes a day when you need support and the same people you helped are not there for you, and it hurts you because you think if they were in my place I would have been there for them. But here is the key question. Did you help because it was your nature, or because you expected something in return? Because if you did it from the heart, then you don't need a reward. But if you expected to be treated anyway, then what you did was not help. It was a silent contract waiting for reciprocity. And I am not saying that it does not hurt when people do not respond as one expects. Of course it hurts, but here is the difference between the one who suffers and the one who has peace. The one who suffers clings to the idea that others should act as he would. The one who has peace accepts that each person is as he is without expect nothing, because in the end the only thing you can control is how you act, not how others act. You can choose to be honest, you can choose to be generous, you can choose to be loyal, but you can't demand anyone to do the same, and the sooner you accept that, the less disappointments you will have in life. Marcus Aurelius said that there is no point in getting angry because someone acts according to his nature, because it would be like getting angry with the wind for, and that's exactly what we do when we expect people to be different than they really are. Now, how do you apply this lesson in life? Very simple. Whenever you feel angry or frustrated that someone didn't act like you would, ask yourself these questions. It really made sense to expect them to act like I'm suffering because I expected something that was never guaranteed. If I just accept that everyone is how they are and proceed without being resentful, what if? Don't pass. It will be an unnecessary disappointment. So the next time you feel that someone failed you, instead of wondering why they didn't do the same thing that I would do, Xenia, ask yourself why I keep waiting for them to act like I swing, and that's where you're going to find the real peace. Lesson 11. You don't need anyone's approval to be at peace. If you are looking for peace, do less, or rather do only the essentials, what the reason of a social being dictates, what nature demands. In that way, you will not only have peace, but you will also be free. Marcus Aurelius. Now tell me the truth. How many times have you felt the need for others to approve of what you do? How many times have you stopped before making a decision because you thought, and if others don't like to swing? How many times have you felt that if you don't receive validation from others, so maybe what you did has no value? If it has ever happened to you, don't worry. It happens to everyone, because from a young age they teach us to seek approval. They teach us that if they applaud us, then we did something right, that if others accept us, then we are on the right track. But here is the truth that the Stoics understood centuries ago. Peace does not come from external approval, comes from the look. The need for approval is a trap, because if you live expecting others to validate what you do, you will always be tied to the opinion of others. You will always worry about what they think. You will always doubt yourself, because your value will depend on something that is out of your control, and what is out of your control will inevitably make you suffer. Imagine that you want to start a project, but before you do it, you ask several people what they think, and each one gives you a different answer. One tells you that it is a great idea, another tells you that it will not work, another simply laughs, and in the end you are paralyzed because you do not know what to do. But here is the question. Why do you give so much weight to the opinion of others? Are they going to live your life for you? Perhaps they know your purpose better than you. Of course not. So why make their approval? Decide what you do or don't do. Think about how many times have you done something just because you wanted someone else to recognize it, to tell you how good you are, how smart, how talented. But tell me what happens when you don't receive that recognition. You feel empty. You feel that it wasn't worth it. You feel that it wasn't enough. And there it's where you realize the trap, because if your happiness depends on external recognition, then it will never be yours. Really, it will always be in the hands of others. The Stoics had a solution for this. Do the right thing, no matter if someone recognizes it or not. Do it because it's what your reason dictates. Do it because it's what you think you should do. Do it because it's aligned with your values, and if others do it, they approve, well, and if not, also because you don't need applause to know that you did the right thing. Now, I know this is difficult because we live in a world where external validation is like a drug. Every positive comment, every applause makes us feel good for a moment, but the problem is that if you depend on that, then your peace will never be stable, because the moment you stop receiving approval, you start to doubt yourself, and that's where the Stoics teach us the most important lesson. If you want peace, stop looking for approval and start looking for coherence with your own values. Imagine that you do something out of pure conviction, something you really believe in, and someone comes and tells you that they don't agree, that they don't like it. You would change what you did just so that that person accepts you. You would stop to be who you are just to fit into someone else's idea of you. Because if you live to please others, you're never really going to be free. Marcus Aurelius said that true tranquility comes when you do what your nature dictates, not what the crowd dictates. And when you understand this, you realize something powerful. The opinions of others are just noise, and you decide if you give them power or if you just go your way without being affected. Now, how do you apply this lesson in life? Very simple. Every time you feel like you need approval to feel at peace, ask yourself, am I doing this because I really want it, or because I want to be recognized? I need others to validate what I do? Or can I be at peace with my own decision? I really want to spend my life tied to the opinion of others. Oh, I want to be free to act according to my own principles. Because when you start asking yourself these questions, you realize that what really matters is not that others approve of it, but that you approve of it. And here comes the most important thing. The only approval you need is yours. If you feel at peace with what you do, if you believe it is the right thing, if it is aligned with who you are, so it doesn't matter what others think. And the day you stop relying on external validation, you'll realize something amazing. You never needed anyone's approval. You just needed to give yourself permission to live as you really want to live. Lesson 12. You can't control what others think of you, but you can control how it affects you. If you care too much about what others think of you, you'll be their prisoner. Tell me the truth. How many times have you felt anxious thinking about what others will say about you? How many times have you changed something about your way of being or speaking just to avoid criticism? How many times have you held yourself back from doing something for fear of what they might think? Sure, many times, because it happens to all of us. We all care to some degree about the opinion of others, is natural. But here there's the question. You can really control what others think of you. You can really prevent them from talking, judging, criticizing. The answer is no, and the Stoics were very clear about what people think of you is their business, not yours. You can do everything right. You can be the best person in the world and still there will be someone who criticizes you, someone who judges you, someone who has something negative to say, because that's human nature. No matter what you do, there's always going to be someone who misunderstands you, who doesn't understand you, who judges you without knowing you. So the real question is, you're going to let that affect you. Because, look, you can't control the minds of others. You can't force them to see you the way you want. You can't make sure that they always treat you fairly. But what you can control is how you take those comments, how much power you give them, how much space you allow them in your mind, because that's where your freedom really lies. Imagine that one day someone says something hurtful to you, something you didn't expect, something that seems unfair. What do? The natural reaction is to feel bad, to start thinking about it over and over again, to ask yourself why they said that, to ask if it's true, if you should change something. But this is where it comes in. The Stoic mentality. What do you gain from that? What does it change? Worry about what to give so much power to an opinion that doesn't even define who you are. Look at Marcus Aurelius said that we can't control what people think or say, but we can control how much we care. And this is key, because most of the time what affects us is not what they tell us, but what we do with those words. If you let that a criticism makes you doubt yourself, then you're giving it more power than it deserves. But if instead you just let it go, you go on with your life, and you stand firm in what you believe in, then that criticism loses its effect. Think about this. If someone insults you in a language you don't understand, it affects you. Not because you don't even know what they're saying to you, but if someone insults you, it says exactly the same thing in your language, then it does hurt you. You see, the difference is not the word, it is the interpretation you give it. That's why Epictetus said that it is not what happens to us that affects us, but our perception of it. Tell me now, what happens if you choose to just be who you are without seeking permission, without the need for validation, instead of life anxious about what others think of you? I'm going to tell you what happens if you start ignoring pointless criticism. It happens you free yourself. It happens that you start living more peacefully. It happens that you stop bearing the weight of expectations that aren't even yours. And I'm not saying that you don't listen to anyone. Feedback is obviously something we can learn from, but the important thing is you shouldn't want to spend your life able to accomplish. When you reach to that stage, when you appreciate yourself without the need for outside validation, that's when you will really be free. The only opinion that really counts is what you have about yourself. Lesson 13. One cannot afford to squander their too limited life on pointless matters. Unless it's for the common good, you will miss the chance to accomplish something beneficial by asking what you do or do. Hence, spend what remains of your life on ideas about other people. Marcus Aurelius. Now, someone else. Tell me how often you have wasted time fretting about things that, when you stop to consider it, have absolutely no bearing on anything. How many hours have you wasted contemplating an argument that has already passed, an issue you cannot solve, or a pointless remark someone else most definitely said? We have all slipped into that game of diversion, of needless concern, of mental tiredness for objects. Though they don't alter anything, here's the fact the Stoic philosophers knew centuries ago. Time is your most important resource. Each minute you waste on pointless activities is one you will never be able to recover. Look, most people live as if they are eternal, as though they had limitless time to squander on needless disputes, on meaningless issues, on grudges that have nowhere. There's a year left to live. You keep worrying about the same things. You keep wasting your energy on people who don't contribute anything. You keep allowing little things ruin your day, because here's the truth. Your time is the only thing that's really yours, and every moment you waste on something worthless is a moment that will never come back. Every time you get angry about something meaningless, every time you argue about something that, in a moment, month, you won't even remember. Every time you spend your energy on worries that get you nowhere, you're giving away pieces of your life to what doesn't deserve it. Now imagine you're in a long line. Someone gets in front of you and your first reaction is to fill you with anger, to think about how rude people are, how unfair it is for someone to take advantage of yourself. But now ask yourself, is it worth it for this stranger to ruin your day? I really want to spend my energy on this. What do I gain by getting angry? Because, in the end, the line will continue to advance. the person will continue on his way, and you can choose if you get caught up in that anger or if you just let it go and keep enjoying your day. The Stoics teach us that life is short and most human suffering doesn't come from what really matters, but from small things that we let our mind grow. Marcus Aurelius advised against wasting your time on pointless ideas, as every second you spend thinking about what other people do for what you do, you have no answer as you cannot alter. This is a time you might be applying on something with worth. Consider all the activities you have ceased doing in due course of concern over trifles. How many times did you miss a moment because you were preoccupied with something meaningless? Because you're caught in your own head and others think time is squandered solely while you're doing nothing. How many chances have you missed? The reality is, however, that it also disappears when you spend it on pointless rage that doesn't alter anything, on reckless anxieties, or on useless objects. Now tell me what would happen if from today you decide that you are not going to give importance to what does not have it. What would happen if every time something tries to take you out of your center, you ask yourself, this still matters in a month, Xenia. This deserves my energy swing, this really affects my life swing. What would happen if you decide that you are only going to focus on what is really worth it? I am going to tell you what would happen. You would have more peace, more clarity, more control over your life, because the moment you stop spending your time on it, you start using it on what really matters. Look, life moves fast, and every day that passes is one day less. What you have left with every minute you spend on meaningless things is a minute you will never get back. So the question you should ask yourself every day is, am I using my time on something that is really worthwhile, or am I letting the insignificance steal my life? Because the day you realize that there is no time to waste, that day you will stop worrying about unimportant things and start to live truly. Lesson 14. You can't change the past, you can only decide what to do with it. Don't waste any more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Now tell me how many times you've been stuck thinking about something that happened and that you wish you'd done differently. How many times have you felt that sense of regret of wanting to turn back time to change what you said, what you did, what you didn't do? How many times have you stayed up at night thinking about the same thing, as if somehow thinking about it could change it? Surely, many, because it happens to all of us. But here is the reality that the Stoics understood centuries ago. The past cannot be changed. You can only decide what to do with it. Look, most people get stuck in the past, in what they could having done, what went wrong, in what they did to them. But tell me, what do you gain from that? What good is it to keep reliving something that you can no longer modify? What sense does it make to punish yourself for something that has already happened? Because here is the key. Suffering for the past does not change it. It only prevents you from moving forward. Imagine that you made a big mistake, one of those that haunt you, that make you feel guilty, that you make you think, if I had done this instead, everything would be different. But this is where you have to ask yourself the most important question. You can change what happened. Yes or no? If the answer is no, then the only smart option is to stop focusing on the mistake and start focusing on the solution, on what you can do now, on what you can learn, on how you can make sure you don't repeat it. Look at the Stoics. They didn't say that the past doesn't matter. Of course it does, but not as an anchor that stops you, but as a lesson that drives you. Because if you keep spending your energy on what already was, the only thing you achieve is to get stuck. It's like wanting to walk forward while constantly looking back. You're inevitably going to stumble, because the only way to move forward is looking straight ahead. Epictetus said that it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how you decide to respond to it, and this is key, because most of the time what hurts us the most is not the event itself, but our resistance. Accept it, our internal struggle with the fact that we can't change it. But tell me, if instead of resisting you accept it, and if instead of continuing to think about it you let go, and if instead of wondering what you could have done different, you ask yourself what you can do now with what you learned. Think about this. Imagine that someone hurt you in the past, that they betrayed you, that they treated you in a way that you didn't deserve, and you have been carrying that resentment for years, repeating over and over again in your mind what happened, wishing things had been different. But here is the key question. Your grudge changes. What happened gives you back that you lost. Does justice in some way? The answer is no. So why do you keep allowing something that has already happened to continue controlling your present? Look at the past. is not your enemy, is your teacher. Every mistake, every failure, every difficult moment left you with something. The question is not why it happened. The question is, what are you going to do with it? If you made a mistake, learn from it and move on. If someone hurt you, use that experience to be wiser, not more bitter. If something didn't go the way you wanted, look for the lesson in it and keep walking. Because the problem isn't that the past exists, the problem is that you keep dragging it like it's a burden, when in reality it should be a step that helps you climb higher. Now tell me, what would happen if from today you decide that you're not going to waste a minute more regretting what already was? What would happen if instead of focusing on what you can't change, you focus on what you can do with what you have? Now I'm going to tell you what would happen. You would have more peace, more clarity, more freedom, because the day you stop carrying the past will be the day you really start living. So the next time you feel that your mind wants to drag you into what has already happened, ask yourself, this is still relevant today? I can change it. It helps me to keep thinking about it. And if the answer is no, then let go of it, because holding on to the past is like holding a rope with thorns. The more you squeeze it, the more you hurt yourself. And the only thing you need to stop suffering is to let go of it. Lesson 15: don't let anything or anyone steal your inner peace. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, today I will encounter interference, ingratitude, arrogance, disloyalty, envy, and selfishness. All this happens because of people's ignorance about good and evil. But I, who have understood the nature of good, know that no one can hurt me because they cannot make me act against my will. Marcus Aurelius. Now tell me how many times you have felt that something or someone ruins you. The day when you've woken up with a good attitude, wanting to be at peace, and suddenly someone says or does something that takes you out of your center. It can be an unpleasant comment, an unexpected problem, a disrespectful attitude, anything that makes you feel like you've lost control. But here's the key question. Did you really lose control or just give it up? Because here's the truth that the Stoics, they understood centuries ago: no one has the power to steal peace from you unless you give it to them. External circumstances can't affect you if you decide they won't. The comments of others can't harm you if you don't give them importance. Problems can't sink you if you stay calm. Because peace is not something that comes from outside, it's something you build inside yourself. Look, we all want a life without problems, without conflicts, without worries, but that doesn't exist. There are always difficult situations. There will always be complicated people. There will always be uncomfortable moments. What really makes the difference is not what happens, it's how you decide to react to it. Imagine that someone insults you. What do? You can get angry, let their words get into your mind and spend the day thinking about it. But tell me what you achieve with that. Your anger now is your anger. Your poison now lives in you. Why carry something that doesn't even belong to you? Because here is the key. The words of others only have the power that you give them, and this not only applies to people, also to situations. Imagine that you have a perfect plan for the day and suddenly something is ruined, traffic slows you down, an event is cancelled, something goes wrong in work. You have two options. You can get frustrated, curse your luck, ruin your mood, or you can remember that you don't control what happens, but how you decide to face it. You can breathe, accept the situation, and move on without letting it steal your peace of mind. Marcus Aurelius was clear. Life is going to throw challenges at you every day, but if you prepare for them, if you decide that nothing that happens outside has the power to take you off your center, then you'll be unbreakable. 'Cause tell me, what's the point of losing your cool over things that are out of your control? What do you want to let the chaos of the world turn into chaos inside you? Think about this. Most people are like a leaf in the wind. If the day starts well, they're happy. If something goes wrong, they're frustrated. If someone treats them well, they're in a good mood. If someone treats them badly, they feel miserable. But tell me, you really want to live like this, depending on what's going on outside, to feel good inside? 'Cause yes, you always need everything. If it is perfect to be at peace, then you will never have peace, because the world is unpredictable and there will always be something that could take you out of your center if you allow it. The Stoics taught us that the key to a quiet life is not to avoid problems. It is to learn to be unaffected by them, to learn to see things as they are, without exaggerating them, without giving them more weight than they really have, to learn to observe others. Most people react automatically to everything. But here is the difference between most people and a person who truly dominates their mind. Most react. The wise choose their answer. Most let their serenity to be carried away by emotion. The wise observe it without letting it control them.